asphalt like 1,000 angry fists, turning the empty parking lot into a sea of shimmering reflections. I stood there, leather jacket soaked through, watching the neon sign of the roadside diner flicker and buzz in the darkness. My name is Marcus Ghost Riley, and for 15 years I'd been riding with the Iron Ravens, a brotherhood forged in steel, loyalty, and the open road. We lived by one rule: the club comes first, always. But that night, everything I thought I knew about loyalty was about to shatter. I was about to head back to my bike when I heard it, a small voice, barely audible over the storm. A kid, no more than 7 or 8 years old, stood at the edge of the lot, soaked to the bone, his thin frame trembling. His eyes were wide with terror, darting between me and the darkness behind him. He took a step forward, his lips moving, forming words I couldn't quite make out. Then he ran toward me, stumbling, falling, scrambling back to his feet. When he reached me, he grabbed my jacket with both hands, his knuckles white. His face was bruised, fresh marks across his cheek, a cut above his eyebrow still bleeding. And then he said the words that would change everything. "Please, you have to kill him. He's going to kill my mom tonight. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a like on this video and drop a comment telling me, what would you do if a terrified child begged you to save his mother's life? Would you walk away? Would you call the cops? Or would you do what I did? Because I promise you, the choice I made that night led me down a road I never expected. What you're about to hear isn't just a story about violence or revenge. It's about the cost of redemption and how sometimes the people we think we're saving end up saving us instead. The next 30 minutes will take you places you won't believe. Trust me, you need to stay until the end, because the twist in this story, you won't see it coming. I knelt down in the rain, eye level with this kid, and for the first time in years, I didn't know what to say. His name was Tommy, and between gasping sobs, he told me his story. His mother, Sarah, had remarried 2 years ago, a man named David Brennan, a successful real estate developer who looked perfect on paper. But behind closed doors, David was a monster. The beatings had started small, escalating over time. Tonight, Tommy had overheard David on the phone, telling someone that he was finishing this tonight, that his mother wouldn't make it to morning. I asked him why he came to me, of all people. Tommy's answer cut through me like a blade. "Because you look scary," he said simply. And then my mom said, "Scary people are the only ones who can fight other scary people." The kid wasn't wrong about me. I'd spent a lifetime cultivating that image. The scars, the tattoos, the reputation. But somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten that fear can protect as much as it can destroy. I pulled out my phone to call the police, but Tommy grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "No, he has friends in the department. They won't help. They never help, please. You're the only one who can stop him." I should have walked away. Club rules were clear. No involvement in civilian drama, no exposure, no heroes. We weren't vigilantes. We were riders, businessmen, a family unto ourselves. But when I looked into Tommy's eyes, I didn't see a stranger. I saw my own daughter, Lily, who'd been taken from me 3 years ago in a drunk driving accident. I saw her terror, her helplessness, and I remembered the promise I'd made at her grave, that I'd never let another child suffer if I could prevent it. I stood up, my decision made. "Get on my bike," I told Tommy. "Take me to your house." The address Tommy gave me led to a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where people watered their lawns and waved at their neighbors. Picture-perfect houses with picture-perfect lives, or so it seemed. Sarah Brennan's home sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, a modern 2-story with a manicured lawn and expensive cars in the driveway. From the outside, it looked like the American dream. But I'd learned long ago that the worst nightmares often wore the prettiest masks. I parked my bike 2 houses down and told Tommy to stay put. He protested, but I gave him my phone. "If I'm not back in 20 minutes, you call this number," I said, showing him my club president's contact. "Tell him Ghost sent you. He'll know what to do." As I approached the house, I could hear raised voices inside. Through the front window I saw her, Sarah Brennan, a woman in her early 30s with dark hair and eyes that had seen too much pain. She was backing away from a tall man in an expensive suit, his face twisted with rage. David Brennan. He grabbed her by the throat, slamming her against the wall, his other hand raised to strike. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just moved. The front door gave way with one kick. The sound of splintering wood brought David spinning around, releasing Sarah, who collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. For a moment, we just stared at each other, this polished businessman and the tattooed biker who just invaded his home. Then David's expression shifted from shock to fury. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, reaching into his jacket. But I was faster. I crossed the distance between us in 3 strides and caught his wrist before he could draw whatever weapon he was reaching for. A gun clattered to the floor, a 9mm expensive, the kind of weapon a man buys when he wants to feel powerful. "I'm the nightmare you didn't see coming," I told him, my voice low and cold. "And you're done hurting this woman." What happened next I didn't expect. Sarah, still on the floor, her voice hoarse, spoke words that stopped me cold. "Don't kill him," she whispered. "Please." "You don't understand," David laughed, a cruel sound that made my blood boil. "She's right, biker trash. You have no idea what you've walked into. Sarah belongs to me. She knows the consequences of leaving." But Sarah wasn't looking at her husband. She was looking at me, and in her eyes I saw something I recognized, the kind of pain that comes from loving someone you've lost. "He has my daughter," she said, tears streaming down her face. "My baby girl, Emma, she's 6 years old. If I leave him, if I call the police, she disappears forever." He's made that very clear. The room seemed to tilt. This wasn't a simple domestic violence situation. This was a hostage scenario, a carefully constructed prison built on a mother's love. David smiled, confident now, believing he'd won. "Emma's somewhere safe," he said. "Somewhere only I know. And if anything happens to me, if I miss even one check-in call, my associates have instructions. You understand what I'm saying, don't you, Sarah?" I looked between them, my mind racing. This changed everything. I couldn't just beat down David and walk away. I couldn't call the cops without potentially signing a death warrant for a 6-year-old girl. And the clock was ticking. Tommy had said David planned to finish this tonight, which meant whatever sick game he was playing was reaching its endgame. "Where's the girl?" I demanded, tightening my grip on David's wrist until I felt bones grind together. He gasped in pain but kept grinning. "Go ahead, break it," he hissed. "Break both my arms. Torture me if you want. But Emma dies in 72 hours without my daily call. And trust me, friend, you'll never find her in time. I've been planning this for months," Sarah sobbed, pulling herself up against the wall. "Please," she begged me. "Please don't hurt him. Just go, I'll be okay. I always am." But I knew the truth. I could see it in David's eyes, in the way he'd been talking. Tonight wasn't about another beating. Tonight was about murder. He'd backed himself into a corner, and the only way out he saw was eliminating Sarah and disappearing with Emma, starting a new life somewhere with a new identity. I released David and stepped back, my mind working through the angles. The club had resources, hackers, investigators, people who specialized in finding the unfindable. But we'd need time, and time was the one thing we didn't have. That's when I remembered something. Something David had said. "You mentioned associates," I said carefully. "You mentioned check-in calls, which means Emma isn't alone. Someone's watching her." David's smile faltered just for a second, and in that second, I knew I'd found the crack in his armor. I pulled out Tommy's phone, my phone, and made a call I never thought I'd make. Jake Reaper Morrison, president of the Iron Ravens, answered on the second ring.
"Ghost, where the hell are you?"
"You missed church. I need the crew," I said simply. "All of them. And I need Cypher." There was a long pause. Jake knew me well enough to understand I wouldn't ask, unless it was serious. "What did you get into?" "A little girl's life," I answered. "Maybe less than 24 hours to find her. Can you help or not?" Another pause, then, "Send me the address. We're rolling out now." 20 minutes later, the sound of motorcycles filled the quiet suburban street. 7 bikes, 7 riders, my brothers in leather and steel. The neighbors' curtains twitched, doors locked, lights went out. The iron ravens had that effect on people. But we weren't there to cause fear. We were there to end it. Jake walked into the house first, taking in the scene with the practiced eye of a man who'd seen every kind of trouble. Behind him came Cypher, our tech specialist, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses who looked more like a professor than an outlaw biker. He carried a laptop case and a device I didn't recognize. "Talk to me," Jake said, his voice commanding immediate respect. I explained the situation quickly, the hostage daughter, the check-in calls, the ticking clock. Sarah sat on the couch now, wrapped in a blanket, watching us with a mixture of hope and terror. David, secured to a chair with zip ties, glared at all of us with impotent rage. Cypher set up his equipment on the dining room table, fingers flying across the keyboard. "The check-in call," he said without looking up. "What time, what number, and what does he usually say?" David kept his mouth shut. Jake walked over to him, crouched down until they were eye level. "Let me explain something to you," Jake said quietly. "Ghost here, he's got a soft heart. He cares about rules, consequences, doing things the right way. Me? I stopped caring about any of that the day I watched my baby sister die because no one would help her. So you've got two choices. You can tell us what we need to know, or I can take you somewhere quiet and spend the next few hours persuading you. And trust me, I'm very, very good at persuasion." The look in Jake's eyes must have conveyed something because David's bravado cracked. 9 p.m., he said hoarsely. "Every night at 9 p.m., I call a burner phone. If I don't call, or if I say anything wrong, Emma's handler has instructions." Cypher checked his watch. "That gives us 45 minutes. He looked at David with cold calculation. "What's the number?" "What do you say?" David gave us the number, but he wasn't stupid. "There's a code phrase," he admitted. "I have to say, the package is secure within the first 10 seconds, or they know something's wrong. And my handler knows my voice. You can't fake it," Cypher smiled, a predator's smile. "Watch me." He attached a small device to his laptop and gestured for David to speak. "Say the phrase." "Say it exactly how you normally would." David hesitated, then spoke. "This is Brennan. The package is secure. Continue protocol." Cypher's fingers danced across his keyboard, and I heard David's own voice play back from the computer speakers, perfect in every detail. Voice modulation software, military grade. "We can fake the call," Cypher confirmed, "but we still need to find the location. That's the real problem. He has to know where she is," Sarah said, her voice stronger now, filled with a mother's desperate determination. "David, please. I've done everything you asked. I've stayed, I've obeyed, I've kept quiet. But Emma's innocent. She doesn't deserve this. Tell them where she is." For a moment, something flickered across David's face. Maybe regret, maybe fear, maybe just calculation. "She's at the old Riverside warehouse," he said finally. "The abandoned one by the docks. Second floor, northwest corner, room with the blue door. Bunkers Hayes is watching her. He's one of my business partners." Jake was already on his phone, pulling up maps, coordinating with the other club members. "Riverside docks, that's 40 minutes from here if we push it. Cypher, make that call. Ghost, Sarah, you're coming with us. If David's lying, I want his victim there to remind him what happens when you lie to the Iron Ravens. We moved like a well-oiled machine." Cypher made the 9 p.m. call, David's synthesized voice delivering the code phrase perfectly. Whoever was on the other end seemed satisfied, the call ending after just 15 seconds. But we all knew that bought us 24 hours at most. When the next call didn't come, alarms would sound. Sarah climbed onto the back of my bike, her arms wrapped tight around my waist, and we rode into the night. The city blurred past us, streetlights and storefronts melting into rivers of light. I could feel Sarah's tears soaking through my jacket. Could feel her trembling against my back, and I pushed the bike harder, faster. Racing against time and fate, the Riverside warehouse loomed against the night sky like a monument to decay. Broken windows stared down at us like empty eye sockets, graffiti covering walls that had once been white. This was where the city's forgotten came to disappear, where deals went bad and bodies were never found. And somewhere in that darkness, a 6-year-old girl waited for rescue she didn't know was coming. We parked the bikes a block away and approached on foot. Jake divided us into 2 teams, one to cover the exits, one to go in for Emma. Sarah insisted on coming with the entry team, and I didn't argue. A mother's love is a force of nature, stronger than fear, more powerful than any weapon. The warehouse door hung off its hinges, rust and time having done their work. Inside, the darkness was almost total, broken only by thin shafts of moonlight filtering through the broken roof. We moved silently, years of riding together, having taught us to communicate without words. Jake took point, his flashlight cutting through the gloom, revealing a maze of collapsed shelving, rotted pallets, and the occasional evidence that people still use this place. Needles, sleeping bags, the detritus of desperate lives. The stairs to the 2nd floor groaned under our weight, each step an announcement of our presence. But there was no other way up, no element of surprise to maintain. We just had to trust that speed and numbers would be enough. The northwest corner. A blue door, exactly as David had described. Through the thin wood, I could hear a television playing, some cartoon with bright voices and cheerful music. And then, cutting through it all, a child's voice. "When is Mommy coming to get me?" Sarah's breath caught, her hand clutching my arm hard enough to bruise. That was Emma, her daughter, alive, so close but still unreachable beyond that locked door. Jake positioned himself by the door, gestured for the rest of us to ready ourselves. Then with a nod he kicked it in. The room beyond was small, surprisingly clean, furnished with a cot, a small table, and a television. Emma sat on the cot, a tiny girl with her mother's dark hair and her mother's eyes, clutching a stuffed rabbit. And standing between us and her was Marcus Hayes, a stocky man in his 50s with cold eyes and a gun already drawn. Aim pointed directly at Emma's head. "I thought he might break," Marcus said calmly, as if we were discussing the weather. "David always was weak when it came to Sarah, but it doesn't matter. You're not leaving here with the girl. There are 7 of us and 1 of you," Jake said, his voice steady despite the gun. "You really think you're walking out of here?" Marcus smiled. "No, but neither is she. David pays me well, but he pays me better if problems disappear permanently. You're a problem. The girl's always been a problem. So we all go down together, or you back away right now and let me finish my job." Time seemed to slow. I could see Emma's face, her confusion giving way to fear as she realized something was very wrong. I could see Sarah beside me, frozen in horror, her world balanced on the edge of a madman's trigger finger. And I could see Marcus's eyes, and I knew with absolute certainty that he meant every word. He would kill Emma. He would kill all of us if he could, but I'd seen that look before. 3 years ago, in the face of the drunk driver who'd killed my Lily, the look of someone who'd already given up on their own life, who had nothing left to lose. And I'd learned something that night, something that had haunted me ever since. Sometimes you can't save everyone. Sometimes you have to make the impossible choice. You want to know why they call me Ghost, I said quietly, taking a step forward. Marcus's gun swung toward me. "Stop right there. They call me Ghost because 3 years ago I died," I continued, taking another step. "My daughter was killed by a drunk driver, and something in me just stopped. I've been walking around ever since, just a shadow, going through the motions. You think your gun scares me? Death would be a relief." Another step. Marcus was calculating. I could see it in his eyes. He was trying to decide if I was bluffing, if I really was crazy enough to call what he thought was his winning hand. But that little girl, I kept moving forward slowly, steadily. She gets to live. She gets to go home with her mother. She gets to have all the years my daughter didn't get. And if stopping you costs me my life, then at least I'll die for something that matters. I was close now. Close enough to see the sweat on Marcus's forehead. Close enough to smell the fear beneath his bravado. And then I saw it, the tiny flicker of his eyes toward the door. The unconscious tell that he was thinking about escape, about running. That's when I moved. I wish I could tell you it was heroic, that I disarmed Marcus with some fancy move I'd learned in the service. But the truth is messier, more brutal. I lunged forward, knowing I couldn't reach him before he fired, accepting that the bullet was coming. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the small room, and I felt the impact hit my shoulder like a sledgehammer, spinning me around, but momentum kept me moving forward. Crashing into Marcus, both of us going down in a tangle of limbs. The gun went off again, wild, the bullet burying itself in the ceiling. Then Jake was there, and Reaper and 2 other brothers, pulling Marcus away, disarming him, securing him with the efficiency of men who'd done this before. Sarah rushed past us all, scooping Emma into her arms, both of them crying, holding each other like they'd never let go. Through the haze of pain, through the blood soaking through my jacket, that image was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. A mother and daughter reunited, a family given a second chance. Cypher was already on the phone, calling for an ambulance, feeding a carefully constructed story to the police about a kidnapping we'd stumbled upon, leaving out anything that might come back to haunt us. Jake pressed something against my shoulder, his jacket probably, trying to slow the bleeding. "You crazy bastard," he muttered, but there was pride in his voice. "You beautiful crazy bastard." The bullet had gone through my shoulder cleanly, missing anything vital. I'd survive. I'd have another scar to add to my collection, another story to tell around the clubhouse fire. But more than that, I'd have something I hadn't had in 3 years, a reason to believe that life was worth living, that my existence still mattered. "Thank you," Sarah said. Kneeling beside me, Emma still clutched in her arms. "Thank you for saving my baby." I looked at Emma, really looked at her, and saw not my own daughter but a living, breathing future. All the possibilities that Lily would never have, given to this child instead. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. But it was real, and it was enough. "Take care of her," I whispered. "Take care of each other." The hospital stay was short. They patched me up, asked questions we deflected with practiced ease, and released me into Jake's custody. David Brennan faced charges of kidnapping, attempted murder, and a dozen other counts that would keep him locked away for decades. Marcus Hayes made a deal with prosecutors, trading information about David's criminal enterprises for a reduced sentence. The system worked, for once the way it was supposed to, but the real healing happened in the days and weeks that followed. Sarah and Emma moved out of that perfect suburban prison, found a small apartment in a neighborhood where people looked out for each other. Tommy, it turned out, wasn't Sarah's son. He was the child of Sarah's sister, who died 2 years earlier, leaving Sarah as his guardian. That's why David had targeted them, seeing Sarah's desperation to provide for Tommy as leverage he could exploit. Sarah came to visit me at the clubhouse a week after the rescue, bringing Emma and Tommy with her. The kids were nervous at first, surrounded by leather-clad bikers with tattooed arms and scarred faces. But children have a way of seeing past the surface, of recognizing kindness even when it comes wrapped in intimidating packaging. "I want to thank you properly," Sarah said, pressing an envelope into my hands. "It's not much, but I handed it back without opening it. I don't want your money," I told her. "What I want is for you to promise me something. Promise me you'll never let fear control you again. Promise me you'll teach these kids that being scared is okay, but letting fear make your decisions isn't. And promise me that Emma gets to have a childhood full of laughter and love, and all the things every kid deserves." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I promise," she said. "All of it, I promise." Emma, braver now, approached me and held out her stuffed rabbit. "You can have Mr. Hops," she said solemnly, "for when you're sad. He helps me not be scared." I knelt down, my shoulder still aching but manageable, and accepted the rabbit with all the seriousness the moment deserved. "Thank you, Emma. I'll take very good care of him." After they left, Jake found me in the garage, staring at the stuffed rabbit in my hands. "You know what you did, right?" he said. "You broke about a dozen club rules. Got yourself shot. Involved us in civilian drama that could have blown back on all of us." I nodded, waiting for the judgment, the consequences. Jake smiled. "And I've never been more proud to ride with you. You reminded us what this brotherhood is supposed to be about. Not just loyalty to each other, but to something bigger, something worth bleeding for. He pulled out his phone, showed me a message he'd drafted. I'm calling for a vote. I think it's time the Iron Ravens had a new mission statement. Not just rides and business and brotherhood, but protection. For people who have nowhere else to turn. For the vulnerable, for the forgotten. What do you say, Ghost? Want to help me build something that matters? I looked at Mr. Hops, at the worn fabric and button eyes, and I thought about Lily, about the promise I'd made at her grave. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I think I do. 6 months later, the Iron Ravens weren't just a motorcycle club anymore. We were something more, something that scared some people and gave hope to others. Word spread, the way word always does in the shadows, where people like us operate. A domestic violence victim would hear from a friend who'd heard from a sister that there were bikers who'd help. No questions asked, no payment required. A single mother being harassed by a stalker would find our number scrawled on a bathroom wall at a women's shelter. A kid being bullied would see our patch and know that maybe, just maybe, someone was looking out for the underdogs. It wasn't always dramatic. Most of our work was simple. Walking a woman to her car after her shift. Changing a tire for someone stranded in a bad neighborhood. Being a visible presence outside a custody exchange to make sure an abusive ex-partner behaved. But sometimes it was bigger. Sometimes it was a midnight ride to confront a predator. A carefully orchestrated intervention. A rescue that would never make the news, but would change a life forever. Sarah became part of our extended family. She started a support group for domestic violence survivors, hosting meetings at a community center we helped fund. Emma and Tommy thrived, growing up surrounded by a dozen leather-clad uncles who taught them to be strong, to be kind, and to never let anyone make them feel small. And me, I started sleeping through the night again. The nightmares about Lily didn't disappear. I don't think they ever will. But they were tempered now by dreams of Emma's laugh, by the memory of Sarah's gratitude, by the knowledge that Lily's death hadn't been meaningless. She taught me how precious life was, how fragile, how worth protecting. And in protecting others, I'd found a way to honor her memory. One evening, as I sat outside the clubhouse watching the sun set, Emma and Tommy ran up to me, out of breath and excited. They'd been playing in the vacant lot next door, the one we'd cleaned up and turned into a makeshift playground. "Ghost, Ghost!" Emma called. "Come push us on the swings." I stood up, my shoulders stiff but functional, and followed them to the swings. As I pushed Emma higher and higher, her laughter echoing in the twilight, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of purpose. The knowledge that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, doing exactly what I was meant to do. Jake walked over, 2 beers in hand, offering me one. "You good?" he asked. The question carrying more weight than the words suggested. I watched Emma soar through the air, fearless and free, and I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "I'm good. If you've stayed with me this long, thank you. I know this isn't a typical story. It's messy and complicated and doesn't have a perfect ending. But that's life, isn't it? We don't get neat resolutions. We don't get to fix everything. But we can try. We can show up when others hide. We can stand between the vulnerable and the predators. We can be the scary people who fight other scary people, just like Tommy said. I think about that night often. The rain, the fear in Tommy's eyes, the impossible choice I had to make. What if I'd walked away? What if I'd followed the club rules, stayed out of civilian drama, protected myself instead of protecting them? Emma would be dead. Sarah would be dead. And I'd still be Ghost in name only, a shadow drifting through a life without meaning. Instead, I got a second chance. Not to be the father I was to Lily. No one could replace that. But to be something else. A protector. A guardian. A man who learned that loyalty to your brothers doesn't mean ignoring everyone else's pain. It means having brothers strong enough to face that pain together. The Iron Ravens have changed since that night. We're still outlaws in a lot of ways. We still ride the line between legal and not, still operate in the shadows, still answer to our own code before anyone else's. But our code expanded. It includes the Emmas and the Sarahs and the Tommies of the world now. It includes anyone who needs help and has nowhere else to turn. Some people call us vigilantes. Others call us heroes. We don't care much about labels. We care about action, about results, about looking at ourselves in the mirror and knowing we did something that mattered. We care about earning the respect of kids like Emma, who see past the leather and the tattoos and recognize kindness when they find it. I still carry Mr. Hops with me sometimes, tucked into my saddlebag on long rides. It reminds me why I ride, why I bleed, why I'm still here drawing breath when my daughter isn't. Every mile I cover, every person I help, every moment I spend fighting back against the darkness, it's for Lily. It's proof that her life meant something, that the love she gave me didn't die with her. It transformed, evolved, became something that could save others. If you're watching this and you're in a situation like Sarah was, trapped, afraid, convinced there's no way out, I need you to hear this. You're wrong. There is a way out. There are people who will help, people who will stand between you and the monsters in your life. You just have to be brave enough to ask. Reach out to a domestic violence hotline. Tell someone you trust. Find your local motorcycle club and tell them your story. Not all of us will help, but some of us will. And sometimes that's enough. And if you're watching this and you're like, I was broken, lost, looking for meaning in a world that took everything from you, I need you to hear this too. Your pain has a purpose. Your scars tell a story. And the fact that you're still here, still breathing, still getting up every morning means you have more to give. Don't waste it. Don't let your tragedy define you. Let it transform you into someone who prevents others from experiencing the same loss. Be the scary person who fights for people who can't fight for themselves. Be the ghost in the darkness who protects instead of haunts. Be the reason someone else survives their nightmare. That's all any of us can do. Show up, stand up, never give up, and ride on.